I was late to my own wedding rehearsal, and they replaced me. She wore my dress. He gave her my vows. So I disappeared, no goodbye, no explanation. But I didn't vanish. I rebuilt. Now I'm back, not as the bride who got left behind, but as the woman who made the world regret letting her go. There are moments in life that split you in half. Mine happened at 6:12 p.m., 42 minutes after I was supposed to arrive at my own wedding rehearsal. The glass hall estate shimmered under fairy lights, its gold chandeliers already glowing through the glass walls. From the outside it looked like the kind of wedding I had always wanted, tasteful, romantic, timeless. The kind you only see in bridal magazines or royal tabloids. The kind you spend years designing in your head. The kind I had been planning for 7 years. I clutched the edge of my seat in the back of the car as we pulled into the looped driveway. Traffic had been a nightmare. A downed power line, an overturned truck, a detour through 2 neighborhoods I'd never seen before. And now I was 42 minutes late, which for most people might mean awkward glances and a few passive-aggressive jokes. But not this. Not what I saw when I stepped out of the car. Applause. A loud, cheerful round of it, erupting from inside the hall. The first thing I noticed was that the music had stopped. The string quartet, which I had personally selected, stood frozen mid-pose. A wave of unease prickled at the base of my spine as I passed through the double doors. And there they were. On the platform where I was supposed to stand. In front of the guests I had invited. Under the arch I had commissioned from Florence. Adrien Maddox, the man I had loved and built a future with, stood in a pristine black tuxedo, his smile practiced and glowing. And across from him, in a white wedding gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, stood Camille Westbrook, his PR consultant. His friend. The woman he swore I had nothing to worry about. They were holding hands. She was wearing a ring. The one I had picked out with Adrien in Monaco last year. And they were smiling at each other like I hadn't existed. Like I had never existed. The applause faded. Slowly, awkwardly. People began to turn. Whispering. A few camera phones were still raised midair, not quite sure whether to lower or keep filming. I heard someone gasp my name. Serena. I took a single step forward. My heels clicked on the marble like gunshots. Jason, Adrien's best man and his best friend since boarding school, appeared in front of me, breathless and wide-eyed. Serena. God, we thought you weren't coming. What? I said, and I wasn't sure my voice belonged to me. Is this? Jason looked over his shoulder at the platform and then back at me. Oh. Right. Yeah. Listen, it's a mock ceremony. You know, part of the PR campaign. Camille thought it would be fun. Sort of a promo video? For the resort brand. The fantasy wedding experience. You know. The fantasy wedding. My voice trembled with disbelief. She's wearing my mother's dress. Jason's smile faltered. We thought you wouldn't mind. It's just a dress. Well, it wasn't. It was the dress. A long-forgotten piece of silk tucked away in a cedar chest for decades. My mother's wedding gown. The only thing she left behind before cancer took her from me at 17. I had spent an entire year restoring it, down to every button and every hand-stitched bead. No one had the right to wear it. Especially not Camille. Especially not like this. I moved past Jason before I could process what I was doing. Each step felt heavier, slower. The lights felt too hot. The eyes too many. Camille was still up there, blinking innocently at the crowd, holding Adrien's hand like she had been born to. Like she belonged there. When she turned and saw me, saw the real bride, her expression didn't crack. She smiled. Soft, sweet, smug. Adrien turned too, just in time to see me step up onto the platform. Serena, he said, a smile flickering onto his face like nothing was wrong. Baby. You made it. I stared at him. He leaned forward to kiss my cheek, but I stepped back. Why is she in my gown? I asked. Adrien's eyes flickered to Camille, then back to me. It was just a fun idea. She offered. Said it would help sell the concept. The photographer was already here. We thought. You thought, I interrupted quietly, that it would be okay to marry someone else in my dress and call it a concept? It wasn't a real marriage, he said quickly. You know that. But she's wearing my ring. Adrien looked at my hand. It's not the real one. It's a placeholder. Why does she have it at all? Camille finally spoke. Her voice was soft, a little breathy, the kind that makes men lean in instinctively. Serena, I'm so sorry. I was just trying to help. Everyone was getting nervous. Adrien was pacing. You weren't answering your phone. I was stuck in traffic. Still. Her smile didn't waver. He looked so anxious. I just stepped in. Just until you got here. Right, I said. And the dress? You just happened to find it. Adrien jumped in. She said it was in your closet. She asked for a backup and I thought. You gave her the passcode to my closet? The silence that followed was a slap. Adrien shifted uncomfortably. I didn't think it would matter, he said. We were just trying to fill time. That did it. I laughed. A sound that didn't sound like laughter at all. More like the last breath of something dying. You don't think it matters, I repeated. That you stood up here and played groom to another woman. In front of my friends. My family. And my dress. With my ring. Take it off, I said. Camille blinked. What? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You're wearing a dress that was never yours to touch. Take it off. Now. Adrien stepped forward, eyes wide. Serena, wait. No, I cut in, eyes still locked on Camille. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's theft. And if she doesn't remove it voluntarily, I'll be happy to help her out of it. Camille flushed deep red. I didn't mean, Adrien said it was for the PR rollout. I don't care if he said it was for world peace, I snapped. That dress belonged to my mother. It was mine. And you paraded it in front of cameras like a costume. Adrien tried again. Serena, this isn't helping. Don't make me ask again, I said coldly. Because the next time I speak it won't be with words. The room was frozen. You could hear the ice in my spine crack. Camille trembled, her bravado deflating like a punctured balloon. Then, red-faced and teary-eyed, she turned and rushed from the ballroom, her heels clacking desperately across the marble floor. Staff, I called, turning toward a nearby coordinator. Secure that gown. Have it cleaned. I'll collect it in the morning. Yes, Miss Hale. I straightened, smoothing the front of my coat. Then I looked at Adrien. And I smiled. A small, sharp smile. Congratulations, I said. You got your PR moment. He didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just stood there as the weight of what he'd allowed, no orchestrated, began to crush his performance-perfect posture. I turned away from the lights, the people, the cameras, the shame. I walked through the crowd like a ghost. I passed Jason, who reached for me. I passed Camille, who whispered something to Adrien that sounded suspiciously like, "She'll forgive you." I didn't look back. I got home. I poured a glass of wine. I stood in the middle of my apartment like a statue. And then I opened the drawer. It was still there. Tucked between old notebooks and unpaid sketches. A thick, navy blue envelope with an embossed gold crest and a wax seal. Ravenswell Institute of Design, London. International Fellowship. 1 year. I had gotten it 3 years ago, the opportunity of a lifetime. And I turned it down. Because of Adrien. Because he said he couldn't handle long distance. Because he said real partners stay together. Because he said he'd build something here with me instead. And I was foolish enough to believe that staying meant loving. I opened the envelope. Read the letter again. The contact was still there. A new cohort was starting in 10 days. I dialed. There were 12 missed calls from Adrien when I woke up the next morning. I didn't listen to a single voicemail. Didn't open a single message. Didn't answer when Jason knocked at my door and said, "He's sorry. He's confused. He didn't mean it like that." They all talked like I was an overreacting bride with pre-wedding anxiety. But I wasn't panicked. I was finished. My silence wasn't a tantrum. It was the final sentence of a chapter one no longer wanted to rewrite. I packed like a ghost. No music. No tears. No regrets. Only movements. Efficient, decisive. I folded my sketchbooks. Rolled up floor plans. Slid color palettes and swatches into tubes. My life for the past 7 years had been built with Adrien. In the shared condo we chose for the light in the morning, the sofa we picked together in that ridiculous showroom, the cutlery I bought after he ruined every other knife with avocado pits. But as I looked around I realized something nauseating. Nothing in here was really mine. Even the tea towels had his initials embroidered on them. I left them behind. I called the Ravenswell Institute again. "Miss Hale, the spot is still yours," the assistant director said. "But we'll need you here within the week." Book my ticket, I replied. I'll be on the next flight out. The only thing I took from that condo besides my work was my mother's wedding gown. Not because I still believed in marriage, but because no one else would ever touch it again. That afternoon I returned to the Glasshall estate, not to speak, not to argue, but to collect the dress. The venue manager met me at the door, sheepish and flustered. We didn't know if you'd want it returned. He handed it to me carefully, wrapped in a plastic garment bag. When I unzipped it to check, the damage was clear. Wrinkled hem. Makeup smudges along the neckline. One of the pearl buttons torn off. I didn't say a word. I just nodded once, zipped the bag again, and walked out with it slung over my shoulder like a corpse. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. No dramatic farewell dinner. No, goodbye, I'll miss you Instagram captions. I sent 2 emails. One to my father, don't worry. I'm safe. I'll call once I'm settled. And one to Adrien, there's nothing left to say. Please don't follow me. Then I turned off my phone, boarded the plane, and vanished. London. The cold hit different here. Sharper. Smarter. It woke me up in a way I hadn't expected. On the first morning of the fellowship, I stood outside Ravenswell's towering Gothic campus, dressed in a trench coat and boots, the city fog clinging to my breath. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel vengeful. Clean. Stripped down. Like my life had been a house I kept trying to decorate, when what I really needed was to demolish the foundation. Inside the campus I was surrounded by brilliance. Designers from all over the world. Students whose minds worked in shapes, materials, light, movement. They weren't just creative, they were alive. Fiercely, unapologetically alive. And somehow I was one of them. By the second week I had caught the attention of a man whose presence made the air feel colder. Ezra Leclair. He wasn't part of the program. He was above it. A private investor in luxury properties across Europe and Asia. He wore navy suits like armor, had a voice like silk over steel, and watched people like he was always preparing for war. He visited Ravenswell once a year to scout design talent for his elite brand, Maison Leclair, a portfolio of high-end resorts and private clubs that made Adrien's empire look like sandbox toys. He asked me a single question during a workshop. Where would you place grief in a room's layout? Without thinking, I replied, by the windows. He tilted his head. Why? Because grief needs light. Not pity. He stared at me for 3 seconds too long. Then he nodded and walked away. The next day, I received a discreet invitation slipped under my studio door. Leclair Design Group. Private project review. Confidential portfolio pitch. Suite 7A. Thursday. 6 p.m. Bull. I didn't know it yet, but that invitation would be the first brick in my new empire. The one I would build over the ashes of Adrien Maddox's kingdom. Back in the US, Adrien was unraveling. Camille had begun sharing more accidental photos. Dinner dates, office selfies, cozy mornings in bathrobes that looked suspiciously like his. The press had picked it up. Real estate golden boy's new fiancée? Was Serena Hale left at the altar? Power couple no more. The PR princess takes the crown. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Adrien still hadn't denied any of it. Not once. Back in London. At the pitch meeting with Leclair Group, I presented my design in silence. A full resort concept inspired by transitional architecture. Warm woods, curved walkways, a ballroom shaped like a cathedral with no pews, only open space and reverent light. Ezra sat still through the entire presentation. When I finished, he folded his hands. Have you ever designed in opposition? He asked. To what? To your own past. I met his gaze. That's the only thing I've ever designed against. He smirked just barely. Then this job is yours. That night, I returned to my dorm and turned on my phone for the first time in a week. There was only one voicemail worth opening. Adrien's voice came through the speaker, soft and tired. Serena, I miss you. I don't know what Camille told you, but it meant nothing. You meant everything. Come home. Please. I'm lost without you. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I deleted the message. I wasn't building revenge. I was building something far more dangerous. Relevance. The kind Adrien Maddox never imagined I could have without him. The Leclair project wasn't just high profile. It was sacred. Ezra was launching a new luxury resort series. One in each global capital. The crown jewel of this series? The Heiress Collection, a set of properties tailored for the ultra-wealthy to host bespoke weddings, legacy events, and diplomatic gatherings. Ironically poetic, wasn't it? I was designing wedding venues, just months after having mine stolen. Ezra's only condition: your face stays out of the press. For now. I agreed. He was quiet, precise, the opposite of Adrien in every way. Where Adrien had charmed rooms, Ezra commanded them. He didn't speak unless he needed to, and when he did, people listened. I wasn't sure if I feared him, or respected him. Maybe both. The day we signed the contract, he poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed me mine with a tilt of his head. To what are we drinking? I asked. To destruction, he replied, not missing a beat. And the beauty that follows. I clinked my glass lightly against his. I'll drink to that. Meanwhile in the US, Camille had gone from discreet to disgustingly visible. She started posting curated shots of her hand entwined with Adrien's, always just far enough from his face to keep things deniable, but intimate enough to look scandalous. Adrien said nothing. No clarifications. No denials. No public statements about me, about our wedding, about Camille's behavior. His silence was his answer. The man who once couldn't go 3 hours without texting "I miss you" now couldn't even spare a single sentence to defend me. And that was fine. Because soon my silence would be louder than any denial he could give. 3 weeks later, Leclair Group released a teaser ad. A black and white trailer of an unnamed new resort brand, featuring slow-motion shots of archways, mirrored halls, velvet-draped balconies, and a single line: weddings should never be remembered for their endings. The Heiress Collection. The internet ate it up. Bloggers speculated. Designers tried to guess the firm. And one eagle-eyed bridal account posted a side-by-side. These arches look a lot like Hale's early design sketches from the Maddox Project Eyes #to reach. Ezra forwarded me the post with only one line. Shall we give them something louder to whisper about? I stared at the message. Then wrote back, yes. Let's open the ballroom. 1 week later, Leclair held an exclusive invite-only gala at a historic London conservatory. No press. No cameras. Just elite investors, editors, and tastemakers. The ballroom reveal was the centerpiece. It was mine. All of it. Black marble columns with cascading orchids. Champagne towers spiraling under stained glass. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors etched with phoenix feathers. At the far end, a raised platform with an altar. Empty but perfectly lit, framed by 2 draping silks. The concept was called The Unchosen Isle. Ezra told everyone I'd been inspired by modern minimalism. I hadn't. I'd been inspired by abandonment. I watched from the second-floor balcony in a black silk dress, holding a glass of white wine. Eyes followed me, but no one could place me. I wasn't in the press release. I wasn't in the public team. To them I was a mystery. A ghost in velvet. A woman with no past. Only presence. Ezra joined me halfway through. You made people stop breathing, he murmured, glancing at the altar below. I shrugged. Only because they know what it feels like to be left standing there. He looked at me for a moment too long. Not everyone can turn pain into architecture. I don't want to build from pain, I said softly. I want to build from power. Then you're in the right place. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Adrien watched the gala unfold in real time through a series of anonymous leaks. He saw the altar. He saw the arches. He saw Ezra Leclair, his wealthier, colder rival, standing beside an unidentified woman in black. And something inside him snapped. Back in London. 3 days after the gala, I received a delivery to the studio. A simple gray box with a black ribbon. Inside, a note in Adrien's handwriting. The ring was yours. I was a coward. I miss you. Please come home. I stared at it like it was a weapon. He thought this would fix things. A silk apology wrapped in guilt? No. Not after what he'd allowed Camille to do. Not after the headlines. The betrayal. The performance of replacing me. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I picked up my phone and called Ezra. Tell me about Heiress Paris, I said. You want it. I want it loud. Public. I want the name attached. Ezra paused. You're ready to be seen again? No. I'm ready to be watched. There's a unique power in not explaining yourself. Let them wonder why you vanished. Let them guess how you returned. I wasn't chasing justice anymore. I was becoming the consequence. The Heiress Paris project moved faster than expected. Ezra had already secured the location. A crumbling, romantic mansion near the Seine that once belonged to a disgraced duchess, the kind of ruin poets wrote about. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. They tried to bury her legacy in dust. She turned it into gold. So would I. My face was now public. The new press release dropped 2 days after Camille's viral article. Her proposal reveal was met with mixed reactions. Half heart emojis, half vomit gifs. But my headline, Serena Hale returns. Betrayed bride turned international design powerhouse leads Leclair's Heiress Paris flagship. No mention of Adrien. No mention of Camille. Just me. My work. My vision. My empire. For the first time in 7 years my name wasn't tied to a man. But not everyone appreciated my resurrection. Camille posted a cryptic story the next day. Funny how some people use heartbreak as a brand. Must be nice to profit off pain you created. Below it, a photo of a smashed wine glass, and a blurry shot of Adrien sitting across from her, lips pressed together, his eyes heavy. The comments were vicious. You won babe ring. She didn't deserve him anyway. Isn't that the ex's dress she stole? Lol? I should have ignored it. Instead I crafted a different kind of reply. A statement in stone, silk and steel. The Heiress Paris ballroom would be called the ceremony of one. The centerpiece? A custom chandelier shaped like a deconstructed veil, 500 hand-blown glass petals suspended mid-fall, as if caught in a breeze only the bride could feel. No altar. No groom's side. Just a circular space, designed entirely around the bride. Not a couple. Not a union. Her. It wasn't subtle. But it was beautiful. Ezra stood beside me the day I pitched it to the investors. His arms crossed, his voice calm as always. She doesn't create spaces, he told them. She creates symbols. Meanwhile back in New York, Adrien was falling apart in quiet, expensive ways. 3 of his investors pulled out from his new property. An oceanfront wedding estate Camille had pitched in interviews as a soft reimagining of modern European romance. The press compared it unfavorably to Heiress Paris. I didn't have to drag him. The world was already doing it for me. 2 nights before our Paris preview event, I received an unexpected call. My number was unlisted. Only 5 people had it. And yet I answered. Serena. Adrien's voice was soft, gravelly. Please don't hang up. I didn't say anything. I needed to hear your voice, he said. I still didn't speak. I didn't propose to her, he rushed on. It was a mistake. The article, she twisted it. She leaked the ring photo without asking me. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. Of course it wasn't. Nothing ever was. Do you think I wanted that rehearsal? That dress? That night? I was trying to protect the brand, the rollout. She manipulated everything. Silence. Serena, he said, pleading now. I'm sorry. I was scared. I didn't know how to stop it. Finally I spoke. You didn't need to stop it, I said. You only needed to not start it. His breath caught. You're right, he whispered. You're right. But I see it now. I see what I lost. I see you. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then, no, you don't. You only see what you can't reach anymore. And I hung up. The next day Camille posted another story. It was a screenshot of an email. My name redacted. The subject line read, Legal action for unauthorized use of property, Hale family estate. Her caption, Some girls want to move on. Others just want to move the lawsuit. I should have been rattled. Tad, I smiled. Guess it was true. My mother's estate, the land the Maddox family had tried to develop into a wedding venue behind my back, was now back under my legal control. Camille had used a photo from it in her campaign, without my permission. And I was suing her. Not for the photo. For the symbolism. Ezra poured me a glass of red wine that night in his private suite overlooking the Eiffel Tower. She's desperate, he said. She's loud, I corrected. There's a difference. You're not worried? No. Because she's playing checkers. And you? I met his eyes. I'm the board. He looked at me like he hadn't before. Like he was starting to see not just the woman betrayed but the woman rebuilt. Then gently he reached out and touched the edge of my hair. You're dangerous when you're quiet. I smiled. Good. I'm not done yet. I saw him before I smelled him. Adrien Maddox, perfectly pressed as always, but undone in the way that only those who've lost control pretend to still have it. The collar of his jacket sat just a fraction too crooked. His tie, loose. His eyes, bloodshot as if regret had kept him awake for days. In his hand a cream envelope. Thick. Embossed. He crossed the heiress Paris ballroom like it hadn't been designed by the woman he betrayed. As if he still had the right to walk toward me. The music didn't stop but the air did. I didn't move. Neither did Ezra. Adrien approached, his footsteps echoing between crystal chandeliers and whispered stares. When he stopped a foot in front of me he offered the envelope. I didn't take it. It's yours, he said, voice hoarse. Your mother's land. I transferred everything into your name this morning. He held my gaze like that was supposed to move me. Like he thought I'd smile. Cry. Forgive. You think this fixes something? I asked softly. I know it's too late to make things right, he said. But I wanted to give back what should have never been touched. Not by Camille. Not by my company. Not by me. That, at least, was honest. Ezra remained beside me. Silent, watchful. Adrien glanced at him, a trace of envy flickering in his eyes. I should have listened when you said she wasn't harmless, Adrien continued. But I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to see myself either. There was the confession. The unraveling. He wasn't just sorry. He was broken. And for a moment, just a breath of one, I almost felt pity. Then I remembered the dress. The rehearsal. The crowd clapping while Camille kissed him in my mother's gown. You don't get to want me now, I said coldly. Not after you handed me away without a fight. He flinched. I was scared, he said. No. You were selfish. I lost everything. I took the envelope, slowly. But not out of gratitude. Out of closure. Not everything, I said. You still have Camille, don't you? He exhaled sharply. She's gone. After the lawsuit hit her inbox, she flipped. She blamed me. Said I humiliated her. She moved out 2 nights ago. Took half my wardrobe and all of my reputation. I see, I said calmly. And now that you're alone again, suddenly I'm interesting? It's not like that. It always is. Ezra finally spoke, his voice crisp. This conversation is finished. Adrien turned toward him. And you are, what? Her boss. Her rebound. Ezra's smile didn't touch his eyes. I'm the man who saw her value before she had to bleed for it. Adrien looked back at me. You're really done with me? I stared into his eyes. Eyes that once whispered forever, that once lit up every time I walked into a room. Now they just looked empty. I was done, I said, the moment you let another woman wear my history and call it love. I walked away without waiting for his reply. After the gala, the press exploded. Serena Hale declines public reconciliation with Adrien Maddox at heiress Paris debut. Design queen walks away from fortune, returns to power. New at power duo? Hale and Leclair spotted side by side again. I didn't respond to any interviews. I didn't need to. The photos said enough. Me, head held high, gown flowing like armor, Ezra beside me in midnight blue, our silence louder than Adrien's pleas. The following month, I wore the ivory suit while signing my own brand deal under Leclair Group. Hale Atelier was now official. Independent. Funded. Global. The girl who once wept in the back of a wedding rehearsal hall was gone. In her place, a woman with no interest in forgiveness. Only evolution. The night I closed my first global client for Hale Atelier, Ezra invited me for a quiet dinner at his home. No photographers. No spectacle. He handed me a glass of wine, looked at me differently this time and says, "You don't owe me anything. But if you ever want something that isn't wrapped in apologies and ruined dresses, I'll be here." I lifted the glass, holding his gaze, and said, "I'm not ready yet." Ezra smiles. "Then I'll wait." I wore the ivory suit to Maison Leclerc's winter preview. Tailored, elegant, and lined in dove gray silk. People stared. They didn't know what they were looking at. Only that it was something dangerous. Ezra stood beside me like always, composed and unreadable. But that night he didn't look at me like a boss. He looked at me like a man who knew I was no longer someone to protect. I was someone to stand beside. Camille Westbrook finally requested a private meeting. It came through my new assistant Nora, who wrinkled her nose while reading the email. She says she wants to clear the air before any more damage is done. I took a long sip of coffee. Book it. Nora blinked. You want to see her? I nodded. Yes. But not for closure. For confirmation. Of what? That she never stood a chance. We met at an upscale cafe in Paris, one of those intimate spots tucked behind wrought iron gates and vine-covered walls. The kind of place women come to sip overpriced tea and air out their perfectly contained spite. Camille arrived in head-to-toe beige. Tasteful. Tense. He smiled like we were old friends. I didn't return it. I didn't expect you'd agree, she said, sitting down. I wasn't sure if you'd still be angry. I'm not angry, I said calmly, setting my cup down. I'm very well fed. Her smile faltered. She glanced around. No cameras. No journalists. No Ezra. Just her and me. She leaned in. Look, Serena. I made mistakes. I admit it. I was in love. And when I realized Adrien didn't love me back, I panicked. I tried to save face. The articles, the photos, they weren't about you. They were about me trying to hold on to something. Something that never belonged to you, I corrected. He sat back, jaw tight. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't, I said, wiping the corner of my mouth with a linen napkin. You humiliated yourself in public and tried to drag me with you. But you only ever hit air. I was just trying to steal a life, I interrupted, leaning forward. A dress. A name. A narrative. But you never understood that a woman like me doesn't break when stripped of her title. She rewrites it. Camille's hand twitched beside her teacup. I'm not here to fight, she murmured. Good, I said. Because you already lost. I slid a sealed envelope across the table. Her eyes flicked to it. What is this? Final cease and desist. Every image using my mother's estate or likeness, removed. Every quote, every photo, every promotional blurb referencing your rehearsal wedding, withdrawn under penalty of litigation. She went pale. You can't be serious. I'm not just serious, Camille, I said. I'm funded. She hesitated, then scoffed lightly. You really think this makes you untouchable? No, I said, rising from my chair. It makes me uninterested. I left her sitting there, beige and boiling. On the way out, I passed 3 fashion editors whispering at the bar. One pointed discreetly. Is that her? Serena Hale. The other nodded. And just like that, Camille became a footnote in my legacy. That evening, Ezra called me up to the rooftop of Leclair's Paris headquarters. He stood against the railing, the city sparkling below, and handed me a glass of bourbon. You settled the Camille problem, he said. She settled herself, I replied. He smiled faintly. Good. You don't need to throw punches when you own the building. We stood in silence for a moment, the wind brushing against my shoulders. Then he said something I didn't expect. You scared me once. I turned. Why? Because I thought you'd become obsessed with vengeance. I'm not, I said. I'm obsessed with reclamation. He nodded slowly. I don't want to be someone's revenge story, Ezra. I want to be their warning. The next day I received confirmation. Camille had officially withdrawn from the PR world. Her clients dropped her. Her image was too tarnished. Her last post was a quote. Some stories are better forgotten. I couldn't agree more. And then came the unexpected. Again. An invitation. Gold-leafed. Embossed. The Maddox Group, Winter Benefit Gala. The audacity. The man who had once called me his future was now inviting me to fundraisers? I could have thrown it away. But something about the envelope made me pause. Because this time I wouldn't be coming as a guest. I'd be coming as his competition. I didn't walk into that gala to remind Adrien of what he lost. I walked in to remind him that I'm not his loss. I'm the woman he was never worthy of keeping. The Maddox Winter Gala was a spectacle of gold and money. Velvet-lined staircases. Champagne fountains. Faux laughter on repeat. It was the kind of world I used to design my life around. Soft lighting, manicured optics, controlled narratives. Now I saw it for what it was. A house of cards with expensive wallpaper. I arrived late enough to be noticed, early enough to dominate. The moment I stepped through the entrance, everything went quiet, like the world inhaled. The same world that once whispered behind my back was now holding its breath in my presence. The ivory phoenix suit shimmered under the chandeliers. Ezra walked beside me in classic black, his expression unreadable, his gaze focused. We didn't need to say a word. The room had already said it for us. Is that? That's Serena Hale. She came. God, she looks like she never bled. Exactly. Adrien was near the center of the ballroom, surrounded by people, still holding a drink, still performing, until he saw me, and everything about him dropped. His shoulders, his charm, his practiced smile. He didn't approach. He watched. That was enough. Because this time I wasn't walking in as his bride. I was walking in as his consequence. A Maddox executive approached us. An older man named Grant who used to call me kid, and always forgot my birthday. Serena, he said, clearing his throat. Good to see you. Didn't expect you here. I smiled politely. Funny. I was invited. Yes, well, Adrien thought it might clear the air. Ezra answered before I could. The air isn't unclear, Grant. It's just thinner at the top. Grant blinked, chuckled awkwardly, and made a hasty retreat. I turned to Ezra. That was poetic. He sipped his drink. That was polite. Later that night, during the auction segment of the gala, Adrien finally moved. He crossed the room slowly, gaze cautious but intense. Not like a man approaching an ex. Like a man approaching his reckoning. I turned just as he arrived beside me. You came, he said quietly. You invited me, I replied. I didn't think you'd show. You keep underestimating me. He studied my face like he was searching for something he once knew. I almost didn't recognize you, he admitted. You've changed. No, I said. I returned. He looked down at the floor for a moment, then back at me. I keep wondering what would have happened if I'd waited just a little longer, if I hadn't let her step in. I tilted my head. But you did. And that's the story now. I was weak. You were willing. He swallowed, looked away. Everything fell apart after you left. I know. I didn't realize how much of it was you until it was gone. And now you think saying that earns you a second chance? I don't expect one, he said. I had to say it. For a second, the weight in his voice almost sounded genuine. Almost. But remorse isn't redemption. And I wasn't here for closure. I'd already built mine. I walked away, leaving him in the shadow of everything he helped destroy. 2 weeks later, I opened the Maison Hale flagship showroom in Milan. The same city where I had once considered vanishing into obscurity. Now the city opened its arms. The first private collection was titled, The Mansion I Built from Rubble. Each room was named after something I had once lost, and found again in new form. The aisle that ended midway. The gown rewritten. The mirror that didn't lie. The room of unsaid vows. The final exhibit? A replica of my mother's gown, torn, burned, sewn back together, now displayed behind glass, surrounded by white feathers suspended mid-air. Visitors stood in silence. Some cried. Some whispered. And one headline the next morning read, Serena Hale doesn't design spaces. She designs survival. Ezra flew in for the private preview. We stood together in the last room, the room of unsaid vows. He glanced at the cracked altar sculpture at the center and said, Still no altar? I smiled faintly. No one deserves to stand beside me there yet. He looked at me differently then. Not with desire. Not with expectation. But with respect so sharp it could cut through iron. You realize, he said, you've changed the language of design. No, I said. I just stopped speaking in someone else's dialect. People think closure is a conversation. It's not. Closure is when your silence becomes heavier than their regret. When your success echoes louder than their apology. The white feather sat in that crystal vase for 3 days. Untouched. Unmoved. I didn't return the note. I didn't text Ezra. Not because I didn't feel something, but because I needed to be sure I wasn't just reaching for comfort disguised as companionship. I had learned the hard way. Love without respect is decoration. And I was done furnishing someone else's illusion. Maison Hale exploded after the Milan debut. Articles flooded in. Fashion editors wrote essays about emotional architecture. Museums requested pieces from my exhibit for touring installations. Anne Vogue called me the designer who stitched power into pain. Suddenly, the girl who was once known only as Adrien Maddox's fiancée was now a brand. A movement. A woman who made her name unbreakable. Adrien tried to reach out one last time. An email. Simple. Almost childlike. I see you everywhere. And every time I remember what I could have had. I was afraid of your light. Now I burn without it. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Nora with 2 words, block permanently. That same week Ezra invited me to New York, not as his guest but as his partner. The Heiress collection was expanding, and Ezra wanted Maison Hale to lead the redesign of its new headquarters, a historic bank-turned hotel in Tribeca. He called it the Vault. Fitting. The old me would have seen that as a symbol of security. The new me saw it as a symbol of what no longer needs to be locked away. I landed in New York wearing slate gray, a power suit with no apology stitched into its seams. The airport buzzed with paparazzi, but I moved through them like fog. I no longer needed to hide. I was the headline. That evening, Ezra met me at the top floor of the vault. It was raw, unfinished. Marble dust everywhere, exposed steel beams, sunset pouring through shattered windows. Still under construction, he said. So am I replied. He smiled. I didn't expect you to say yes to this. You didn't offer charity. You offered partnership. That's what I say yes to now. Ezra stepped closer but didn't touch me. Instead he asked, what would you design here if no one could question you? I walked slowly to the middle of the space, staring at the broken floor, the empty space that would one day be filled with chandeliers and silken whispers. I design a ballroom with no center, I said. No bride. No spotlight. Just mirrors so everyone sees themselves when they walk in. Ezra was quiet for a moment. Then softly he said, and what do you see when you look in those mirrors? I turned to him. Myself. Finally. That night he didn't kiss me. But he stayed. And we drank bourbon in silence as the city glowed below us. Not lovers. Not partners. Just 2 people who knew what it meant to lose. And who were finally learning how to build from the bones. Weeks passed. Maison Hale opened a satellite studio in Manhattan. Clients poured in. Adrien's company lost another investor. Camille's name vanished entirely from the industry. But I didn't feel satisfaction anymore. I felt something far more potent. Peace. And then came the offer that made the world stop. Time magazine's 100 most influential women list. They asked me to do the cover. Their only request, wear something iconic. I walked into my Milan archive and pulled the Phoenix suit from its case. Not altered. Not replaced. The same one. I wore it like a crown. The headline. The bride who didn't marry. The woman who built instead. Healing isn't the moment you stop hurting. It's the moment you stop apologizing for who you became when you were in pain. Ezra arrived in Milan 3 days after I sent the message. He didn't come like a man hoping for an answer. He came like a man ready to give one. No grand gestures. No flowers. No theatrics. Just presence. He walked into my private atelier as I was pinning the hem of a bridal suit prototype. I looked up, startled, breath caught mid-sentence, and there he was. His voice was soft. You called. I came. That night we didn't go anywhere extravagant. We didn't need to. We stayed in, red wine, jazz in the background, my apartment glowing warm with lamplight. I curled my legs beneath me on the sofa as Ezra leaned back, eyes on me in that way he always did, quiet, fixed, like I was a piece of architecture he hadn't finished admiring. At some point he said, "You look different in this light." I raised a brow. "Is that your version of a line?" He shook his head. "No. It's an observation. You've always looked sharp. Untouchable. But tonight you look soft. Like you've stopped carrying your story like a sword." I sipped my wine, heart pulsing faster than I let on. Then he leaned in. "But if you ever need someone to hold the sword for you, just for a moment, I will." My throat tightened. That was Ezra. Not loud. Not dramatic. But intentional. Every word from him was a promise dressed in understatement. Later we stood on my balcony, the cool Milan air wrapping around us. Ezra stood behind me, close but not assuming. "I haven't said this," he murmured, "because I didn't want it to sound like I was trying to replace what you lost." I turned, surprised by the crack in his voice. "But I think about you when I wake up. And again when I go to sleep. Not the brand. Not the scandal. You. Ezra. He stepped closer. You don't need to answer me. I know you're still healing. But I need you to know. I'm not standing beside you out of admiration. He paused. I'm standing here because I'm falling for you. The silence between us was no longer cold. It pulsed. I'm falling, he repeated, voice quiet. And I'm not afraid of it. I looked up at him. This man who never asked to be my protector but became one anyway. Not with words. With constancy. With respect. With eyes that never looked past me, only into me. I don't know if I can promise anything yet, I whispered. I don't need a promise, he said. Just a door left open. The next morning I found a handwritten note in my coat pocket. You deserve a love that doesn't arrive after you've been rebuilt, but one that helps you stay whole. I kept it in my passport case. Not because it was a vow. Because it felt like home. Maison Hale unveiled its most defiant collection yet. She said yes to herself. The press went wild. A tailored bridal line of suits, commanding silhouettes, unapologetic lines, no lace, no fragility. Each one came with a quote stitched in gold on the inside lining. I do, to power, to peace, to myself. At the post-launch party, Ezra found me standing near the glass windows, a champagne flute untouched in my hand. He walked up behind me. I turned. Then he said, I wanted to walk beside the woman the world once tried to bury, and watch her bloom in the dirt they left behind. His voice was low, reverent. I reached up and touched his face just once, fingertips against the line of his jaw. Then stay beside me. I'm already here, he said. Love isn't about the ring. It's not about the aisle. It's not even about being chosen. Real love says, I see the woman you fought to become, and I'd rather stand beside her than ever try to save her. The International Women's Resilience Summit in Tokyo marked the height of my career, and the end of an era I had outgrown. I stepped onto the stage in the Phoenix suit one last time, a piece of fabric now more legend than clothing. The room was full, scholars, designers, survivors, leaders. And Ezra. He stood at the back of the room, no cameras on him. No spotlight. Just presence, the way he always loved me. Quietly. Completely. Across from him was Adrien. Still polished. Still alone. Still late to the truth. I delivered my speech the way I lived now. Unfiltered. 2 years ago I was almost a bride. Then I was almost broken. But what I became instead was whole. When he gave her my vows, I thought he took something from me. But that was never mine to keep. Because the only vow that matters, the one no one else can write, is the one I made to myself. The room rose in applause. Ezra didn't clap. He just looked at me like I had just rewritten gravity. Afterward, I found him waiting in the quiet corner of the backstage hall. He reached into his jacket and pulled something out. Not a ring. A pendant. Gold. Simple. Elegant. A miniature feather. Thought. Waited. The phoenix, he said. Because you didn't rise from the ashes. You commanded them. He didn't try to place it on me. He didn't reach. He waited. I don't want your past, Ezra said softly. I want to build what comes after it. My fingers trembled just slightly as I took the chain and clasped it around my own neck. Then I looked up at him and said the words I never thought I'd be brave enough to speak again. Stay. He did. Without question. Without conditions. Ezra didn't move closer to me that night. I did. And when I kissed him, it wasn't to forget what I'd been through. It was to remember who I was now. Epilogue. 1 year later. The vault penthouse became our home. Floor-to-ceiling windows, gold accents, bookshelves overflowing with design sketches and poetry. Ezra still wrote me letters. Small ones. Left in jacket pockets. Tucked into mugs. Slipped under my pillow. My favorite one said, You're not the kind of woman who gets claimed. You're the kind who inspires a man to rise to her level, or be forgotten. Maison Hale became an institute. A movement. And in Paris, a permanent exhibit opened at the Louvre. The Unleft Bride. People from around the world came to see it. They cried in front of the sculpture. The veil turned wings. But I didn't. Because I had already let it go. Sometimes when the nights are slow and the world is quiet, Ezra will reach for me. Not possessively but with the kind of reverence reserved for cathedrals. And I'll whisper, You didn't save me. And he'll answer like he always does. You saved yourself. I just stayed long enough to see how beautiful survival can be. The end.